Here in the studio with me, Major General Eitan Dangot and Dan Perry, the former Middle East editor of AP. Dan, there's a lot of speculation in the past couple of hours, speculations in Israeli media about a deal that is in the making and that's behind everything, and there are negotiations in Cairo now. What's your take?
Well, it looks like Israel changed its position to a position that actually makes sense to me, and I believe also to the general, but wasn't being done until the conversation between Netanyahu and Biden. So it does appear to be somehow related to that. And of course, he also had a massive increase of humanitarian aid, clearly also related to that. That was published. And because we have this incredible situation where major American officials, like the head of the CIA, that are here to talk to the head of the Mossad and the head of the Shin Bet. I mean, it's insanity how much effort is being done. It kind of looks like this must be part of a framework. But also, if you take a step back from that, could be true that there will be a deal. Israel had sort of backed itself, or more correctly, pushed itself into an impossible corner in Rafah, because they couldn't agree with Hamas on how to have the people leave. They couldn't invade without the people leaving. They had zero international legitimacy for going in there in a situation that looked like it would be a certain bloodbath. Something had to give. And so Israel now has backed itself out of that situation with a certain price. The price is that, whereas before that, the narrative was, well, we've got Hamas only in Rafah, a tiny area, what a big success. Now Hamas will effectively be back in charge of the entire southern half of Gaza, more or less. I believe it's true that Israel retains the right to go in there with pinpoint strikes, so Hamas will need to be careful, but it's no longer quite just in Rafah. So Israel's victory narrative looks like less of one, but on the other hand, maybe the day after this current lull or whatever it is will be more plausible for Israel to finish the job, because it no longer has almost 2 million people in Rafah and an impossibility of proceeding.
Israeli Defense Minister has just said that the IDF pulled out Khan Yunis because Hamas has ceased to exist as a military organization, and the IDF will now prepare itself to get into Rafah. Does that sound to you like preparing Israeli public opinion?
Transparently so. I mean, he's learning well from his prime minister, who is a master of playing with words to make up seem like down and day seem like night. Very clearly, Hamas has not ceased to exist. Otherwise, Israel will just walk into Rafah and take back the hostages. The reality is that it looks like Hamas is now in charge of the southern half of Gaza. That has for Israel, the benefit of removing the pressure on a humanitarian front. And as the Major General said, making that the responsibility of Hamas at this point over a large enough area that maybe there will be less talk of famine, less talk of disease. You can maybe work with the southern half of Gaza. And, you know, the major question to me is whether this concession on the part of Israel will change the paradigm with Yahya Sinwar and Hamas that had been blocking everything. Because for all the talk of a ceasefire that we've done in the studio for the past 4 or 5 months since the original ceasefire, it really came down to this. Hamas at no point said, yes, we will agree to anything without Israel pulling out of Gaza. Well, Israel pulled out of half of Gaza. Is that enough to give Hamas a face-saving way to agree to something different, or will they double down on their demand?
We're speculating, obviously, but it seems that the deals in different installments is off the table now for Israel. Israel wants all the hostages, possibly for ending all the war?
Israel, I don't think, would easily take all the hostages for ending the war with Hamas staying in power. Sinwar has been more or less proposing that, and that's what Israel has been refusing, because if Israel leaves without Hamas being persuasively destroyed in Gaza, and Hamas takes over Gaza City again, and despite the fact they've been diminished and hammered and they've lost a third of their fighting force, none of that will matter. They don't care about lives. The narrative will be that Israel was defeated, and I don't think Netanyahu can handle that narrative. And for once, his interests align with those of Israel. I don't think it's good for Israel to have that narrative, because that will invite attack from the West Bank, from the north and south.
That makes it so difficult.
Yes.
The whole thing. Yeah. All right.
But there's something else. If I have time, I can explain, I think, what else they can do, which is Israel has the option of changing the narrative completely by agreeing to the Biden framework and saying, yes, we agree the day after with the PA. Yes, we agree to make peace with Saudi Arabia. Yes, we'll be part of a regional alliance with the U.S. and NATO against Iran. And in that situation, you have a new ballgame. You have a new lease on life. You have a new political context. You have a new diplomatic latitude. You have some legitimacy again in the world. And if you go into Rafah with a population now spread out over a larger area, maybe you'll do so without bringing upon your head a global arms embargo, because that's where the corner Israel had been backed into.
Maybe. We have a statement by the Israeli chief of staff basically endorsing, supporting a deal for releasing the hostages, Dan, saying we are strong enough to pay the price, we'll be able to defend ourselves, we'll be able to attack Hamas in the future. This is significant.
Of course. I mean, he doesn't just say that unless there's a deal brewing that carries with it a very high price that could be embarrassing. And we're going to hear speculation, and more than speculation, that he was put up to this by Netanyahu, the prime minister, in an attempt to create legitimacy in public opinion for something that may otherwise not be popular and might look like a defeat. Now, there is this huge question that we've been talking about throughout the show, which is Israel in effect ending the war? You started this broadcast by suggesting the answer is yes. If the answer is yes, and the pullout to where Israel controls only the north is only the first stage of a total pullout, and they get back all the hostages still, that will be spun as a victory for Hamas.
At the same time, Eitan Dangot, the chief of staff, says our goal, our target is to destroy Hamas. So how does that go together?
I think it doesn't bother or disturb each other, because we have to be realistic. Destroy Hamas is a long process. It's something for the long the range from the timetable that can a lot of months and years. The issue of returning the hostages is urgent. I think that the Chief of Defense Staff just recognized as the head of the IDF that the most important thing towards the civilian, towards the soldiers, is to bring back those that we have chance to bring them alive, and later we can do. And above it, we have other tools now, much more intelligence. We can much more eliminate people, senior figures from Hamas, and you can manage with it later on in a different way.
The government has been saying throughout that it has two goals that appear to contradict but don't contradict: get back the hostages and destroy Hamas. The thing is, it's undeniable that the two goals don't have the same timeline. As General Dangot is saying, destroy Hamas, you can do that tomorrow, the next day, in 3 years. The hostages, getting them back, you cannot. And I think Israel had hoped, despite the successes that are undeniable, and there have been successes in this war, but it had hoped for more successes. To think that Hamas is still firing rockets of any kind 6 months into the war, that doesn't look good. And the families of the hostages at this point are sounding desperate, and that has an ear in Israeli public opinion.
But by the way, I would like to share with you that, in my opinion, I'm estimate that we will see more launching of rockets from the area of Khan Yunis and Rafah, because it's now coming to be one part towards inside Israel. So it will be interesting to see how Israelis...
Precisely to make the point that they somehow won.
Yeah, on the other end, I think that the Prime Minister is give his head to see what's going on the street. The civilian is a very important player now on the street, besides the cooperation of the coalition. This is the state of Israel. The strongness of the IDF built on the street, on the people, on the unity, on what they are doing for the country, doesn't matter right or left. And what is coming here, I think, is the word of the street, and also the situation around us. The war, it will take a long time. I don't see the end of this war. I think Israel is going to the next 5 years of creating a new situation, security situation in its borders, and it's not the last word. And today is maybe a start.
But if that happens, then this new stage that is a 5-year stage will mean that in effect the war has ended. It's a new kind of war. And if the first kind of war has ended, then that really ends Netanyahu's argument that you can't do politics in the middle of a war. That kind of war is over.
The wars never end in the Middle East.
Well, exactly.
Concerning this situation, you have to look what is the relationship with the United States. Strategically, Iran continue with the nuclear. You have to think about the future. I think leaders that are really look for the future of this nation should take calculation and risk for their career. Even the important thing is the continuing of the Israeli independent state.
Do you expect that from this government? The
I
original
expect
64?
it for some of the figures that this is their duty. If not, I expect from the street, from the nation, to make the change.
They're already demanding it. The question is the coalition.
30 seconds each to tell me, is this a day, an important day, something is happening? What do you think?
Important day, but the but is that we will have to pass a lot of difficulties, that it can be changed to both directions. Last word concerning Jordan, you point of the main important thing. I think that one of the lessons of Iran, Hezbollah, and Hamas, they need to expand their threat towards Israel from the border of Jordan. It will be their next station, and we have to be prepared with it, with the support of the United States and the Arab modern
Pivotal
countries.
day today.
The past 6 months, tragically, have been a strategic victory for Iran and for Hamas. Israel is isolated. There's talk of an arms embargo against it. The peace process with Saudi Arabia has been derailed. This looks like an inflection point today, if indeed that inflection point leads to an entirely new paradigm where Israel collaborates with the U.S. framework being offered, and the result is peace and a regional alliance against Iran. That could flip the story on its head.
Okay, thank you very much,
Thank you.
both of you.